Hey, welcome to Grace to Stand. We are back after a few weeks off. It's been, of course, probably for you, and definitely for George and myself, a very busy, active, and unpredictable summer, as I would imagine has been the case for you. George, yes. You just are recently back from Florida. I was in California all last week.
I know.
And so we're frolicking around.
How crazy is that you and I are both from these like sunny states,
yes,
and we end up, in North Carolina.
Well, it's not sunny now, but North Carolina is usually pretty sunny. But golly, it was so nice to be there and be in some sense of dryness and have not this blanket of humidity over.
Where are you? San Diego? Where?
So we flew into San Diego, and we were in Huntington Beach in Orange County area, just a little bit south of LA, for a few days visiting my sister and her family, and then we were up in Fresno, which is the hidden jewel of America. And
I've heard of Fresno's called like the armpit of California. What are you talking
it's called that, but it's because people don't know how to appreciate good things.
Oh, okay.
Which is what we're going to talk about.
It doesn't have any of like the features of why you would go to California, right?
Well,
doesn't have redwood forest, doesn't have beaches, doesn't have...
But it's within a close driving distance to all those things, right? So
that's what they tell themselves.
We're an hour and a half from 3 fantastic national parks, right?
That's
Yosemite,
good.
Kings Canyon, and Sequoia National Park, where you do have the tallest trees in the world, the redwood forest, all of that. So it is a great place. And if you like to eat, Fresno should be an important place for you, because it's the most productive agricultural region in the world, and it's where the normal Californians live instead of all the crazies. So it's a good place to be, and you're not terribly far from the beach. So 2.5 hours.
Do you work for the Department of Commerce there or something?
I am always promoting Yes. It is Yes, and it is my hometown. And you know what's the craziest thing? And we're going to get. By the way, we have talked about Ecclesiastes for several weeks now, and we're finally going to get into it today. But before we get there, and it kind of jives with this, is
it totally jives with
on
this.
Tuesday last week, Melanie and I just had like a little time, like an hour and a half to just frolic around town. Fresno's where I grew up.
Frolicking. I'm trying to picture this.
A little more than 1 million people, decent sized place. There's things there. So Melanie and I ran by my high school, and so I graduated from high school 30 years ago, and they've done all this construction. There's a lot of it that looks completely different than when I was there. And golly, it's like the first time I set foot on that campus in 30 years, and it's weird. It brings. You stand by. I'm standing by like a building or a classroom where I could say, that's the classroom that I had that was in my English class, my junior year of high school, and then you start getting into your mind like these pictures of it's like you're reliving this sort of nostalgic thing, like it just happened, and you see the people around and what was happening. And it was 30 years ago. That's a while, and
lifetime.
Anyway, and it just reminds you. So why do I mention this and Ecclesiastes? And I didn't think about this until I just started talking here. But so one of the most commonly used words in Ecclesiastes is a meaninglessness or meaningless or vanity. Everything is vanity. It's chasing after the wind, and the word for vanity or what did I just say? Meaninglessness is hebel. It's that Hebrew word hebel, and it really gives this image of a vapor or a mist, right? Like it's there, it's apparent, it's like something you feel like you can grab onto it almost, and then it's gone. And it's like you're in this moment of life, and everything that is important in the world is happening in this time, in this place, and it's gone. And 30 years passes by, and never in a million years could I have imagined what, in 1995, what the next 30 years could bring. very little of it has gone exactly how I planned it to go. Right?
Oh,
Right? I
wow.
mean, you.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, I did think of this as we've been, because, I'm in a big season of
Yeah, right.
change and taking stock of my life. And, we didn't think we would move again when we moved to North Carolina. And the Lord has providentially, I mean, we believe that, done this, and we see his hand in it, and we're excited for it. But there is a frustration of picking up and moving stuff, packing stuff. I accumulate. Susan is so much better at just only having what we
Tossing
need.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up
Minimalist.
in a Hallmark store. My parents, like, the business and the
Yeah.
home was one, so our whole home had merchandise and stock
Clutter.
and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I save everything because I might need it one day, and then when I get rid of it, that the next day I would need it, even though I might have had it for 10 years, whatever the thing is. And so I get the sense of that, like vanity of vanities, Solomon says, and how life is like a vapor. I really like that. It's gone, And you and I were talking about this right before we hit record, but also both of us have our oldest kids going to college, and recently just looking for me, at Adam's pictures when he was just a little guy, and I remember I'd hold him in my arm and we'd hike, and he'd point and we'd talk and have fun. And now the dude's a man. He's stronger than me, I'm pretty sure. I was really happy for my boys to help move, because, man, I was broken, and they were like,
I know.
my back, my hips, my hand, my arm started seizing from lifting dressers, and these guys are like, they're like animals, man. Even Asher, my 9th grader. So,
I mean, I start popping ibuprofen when I think about having to do that.
totally. I totally
You don't even have to
preload.
actually do it.
I preload, bro.
Yeah.
I preload. I preload. If I'm going to drive a distance, I preload with ibuprofen. I get it in my system.
I know.
So, yeah, man.
But
and
when
how
you're
does
18, that's like, what? That's old people stuff.
It's-
And it is old people stuff. They're 100% right.
That's
You don't have
hilarious.
to do that. Yes.
No, you know why? Because I went and got all this stuff for Adam to go off to college, and I'm putting in Rubbermaids, and I get him like the staples, right? Benadryl, Tylenol, and ibuprofen. And he's like, "What do I don't want to take all this stuff." I gave him 3 medicine bottles, and it's like you never need a Tylenol for a headache, for a pain. No, I don't. What are you talking about? Ibuprofen for inflammation? What, Dad? Like. It's like, yeah. So, but he's also like a little me, and so as I'm decaying and getting decrepit, I see my younger self in front of me, and there is something beautiful about that, because I could be depressed that I'm not that anymore, and yet at the same time I'm like, oh, I have so much hope and optimism for him, and I get to enjoy the fruit of watching him grow, and the other 2 also.
Right.
And so, yeah, I did. You mentioned I just got back from Florida, so I moved the family down. My wife and the 2 younger kids both going to a new high school and to just an apartment for us right now. And then I'm back. So that was like a whiz bang, U-Haul down, get back. And next week I move Adam over to Western Carolina, and then I button up the house and my office, and change.
Off you go.
Yeah, and life is meaningful, even though, again, a big theme of Ecclesiastes, like you said, is like folly of or vanity of vanities. He does
All
use
is
the word
vanity.
folly. Yeah, it's a breath, and what does it matter? And there's chapter 1 starts, and it's like, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes, a generation comes, the sun rises, the sun goes, the wind blows this way, and then that way, streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. I mean, it's just like there's this cyclical nature to life, and what's the point? And yet we know as humans there is a point. And so we're excited to do this book. And you and I have been talking about this literally since the spring, Darren. And we kept saying we're going to start it next week, and then we take a month off and do something else. So here we are, and we are going to try to do this weekly.
Yes. we are going to try to do this weekly, but we are finally starting, and it's this book Ecclesiastes. It is one of the most fascinating, difficult, and also encouraging books in a very odd, circuitous way of not just the Bible, but anything you'll read. I mean, it seems like when you start off in Ecclesiastes, you're reading through this book, it seems like you've just crossed paths with the most profound curmudgeon that you've ever come across in your life. I mean, this is not a book written by a young man, right, or a young person, someone who's like both of our our oldest kids going off to college, 18. This is like how there was that movie Grumpy Old Men, right? And older people, and don't be offended if you're someone who is in the boomer generation or older than that, but I mean, the older you get, the more crotchety you can become, right? It just is that way. You start talking about your aches and pains. You start complaining about politics and the world and the things that aren't how they ought to be. And I think that when
you also could start getting apathetic too, because you've seen it happen over and over, and you're like, who cares? It doesn't matter,
But and nothing's going to fix it. Nothing's going to change. It just is what it is, and
right.
Blah. Whereas when you're younger, like I'm thinking those teenage years, those early 20s and so forth. I mean, you go to college, or you go to trade, you go do whatever, and you really think that you really believe that you can be part of changing the world.
Change the world.
Oh my goodness, how many you do that to change the world? Really?
Cockeyed optimist.
I can't. I mean, I'm just trying to get my trash out to the street.
Oh man!
Change the world.
I know. I can't lose weight, but I can change the world. Come on.
Yeah. Right. And it's that kind of thing. I mean, you believe that you can, and that's actually, I think, a good thing. I think it is. Mm-hmm. I think it is a good, almost naive optimism that a younger person can have, because it gives them the motivation and the zest to use the energy and the time that they have when they don't have really other people to care for other than themselves so much, and they're probably in relatively good health, good condition, and so forth. They haven't. You just have that naive optimism to where you can go out and take the bull by the horns and go do things. And if you didn't have that at that younger age, then you might not be where you are now. I mean, in life. I mean, it kind of gives you that little boost up to be able to move forward, and I don't know, just kind of pursue the things that God has for you, or just be in a position to where you can make the most of your gifts and callings in life. But it is true that the more games you play, the more times you get up to bat, the more strikeouts you're going to have, no matter who you are. And the more starts you get behind center, the more times you're going to get sacked. And you're going to feel those pains, and you're going to experience the sufferings of life. And things are going to you just begin to discover more and more as you get older that you just do not have control over very much in this life. You have control over what you have control over, and we're responsible. I mean, we're not just passive quietist type people, but you realize that there's not just this 5-step plan to health, wealth, prosperity, peace of mind. because you can follow all those steps and life can still fall apart. There's this book called The Millionaire Next Door, and it talks about how you how these millionaires became millionaires by following this step and doing this thing and not doing that, and so on and so forth. And they became extremely wealthy. And you're led to believe, like, if you just do these things, then you will achieve this life. And at the end, what they leave out is the fact that there's 20 times as many people who did the exact same things as the people who just knocked it out of the park, but something totally out of their control happened. Multiple things happened that prevented them from getting there. And so you could talk about it. It could be wealth, it could be relationships, it could be all sorts of different things. And you get to the end of the road, and you just see that, like, there's a vanity to it all, if that's what you're ultimately chasing.
Well, right. And even when you attain those things, maybe you do attain those things, which many do. And, and Solomon will address that in the next chapter. Like, it doesn't, nothing, I say, like, nothing tastes. It's like they have everything and they're like, eh. And it's like, again, so that's why he uses the phrase striving after the wind. It's you can't, it doesn't satisfy. You don't really grasp it. It doesn't do what you think it's about to do. I agree, like what you said earlier in that about the wisdom. Like, I recently reread this a few months ago, and that's I guess was earlier in the year, and I don't know, every time I read it every few years, I don't read it every year, it just like how am I not reading this all the time? This is some of the greatest, deepest wisdom and philosophy. We know you would expect that from the Bible, but that book, this book would have to rank up there with any wisdom book, even non-Christians or non-Jews would have to read this and say, oh my goodness, this really expresses life. And you've used the paradigm of the older person, the person who's more experienced, and I've heard it said this way, and I think it's a helpful paradigm, but of course this is for everyone. But it's almost like Solomon writes Proverbs for the young man, and he does. He writes it for his son, and then Solomon writes this and says, yeah, but when you get old, this is how you really view these, some of these things. And it's not that the Proverbs are good for all time, and that's what you hope for. But quite often, you can live by the Proverbs, and things just don't work out the way the Proverbs said, or they just don't meet your expectations, or whatever. And that's where Ecclesiastes comes from. And both Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are kind of contrasting wisdom and folly. And he says this here. He says, I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom. Solomon, of course, the wisest person ever to live, surpassing all who are in Jerusalem. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom. And then he says, and to know madness and folly. And then he says, I perceived that this also was striving after the wind. Because again, you read the Proverbs and those are how things should work, and they are fundamentally true. And yet so often, like you said, it doesn't work out that way. And you'll see this in plenty of places. Like, why do the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper? And Proverbs are trying to tell you to live righteously because you'll prosper, Right. And so, Solomon is going to explore this in these chapters. And I love what he says when he says, verse 13. And by the way, for readers, we're not going to read this, like spend 2 minutes to read it. So if for listeners, if you guys are listening to these podcasts, it's great to read the chapter you see in the podcast heading beforehand. It'll take you, a minute or two, and then you'll know, but we're dipping in and out of it. But in verse 13, I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. He's trying to find the meaning of life, essentially. And then he says it's an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. And I just love that. Like, we care about meaning and purpose, about identity, existential questions that I always say my dog Camo doesn't care about. Like we are, and that's why I think Solomon says this is an unhappy business God has given man. We are the, whether it's our prefrontal cortex or whatever reason, of course it's the Imago Dei. God has made us in his image. And so we think about meaning and purpose, existential, big questions. Whereas I don't think my dog Camo thinks about the meaning of life. I think he thinks about...
He's not asking, who am I, ultimately?
Right.
Why am I here? Where am I going?
No.
Why does life matter? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yes.
How does this all end? I mean, those questions are questions that everybody asks. This isn't unique to someone who's a follower of Christ or not. Everybody has to ask those questions on some level, in some form.
Well, that's all of philosophy.
And you right. And so and how you answer them affects totally the way in which you view yourself, the way you view others, the way you view God, the way you view the world. But it's almost like the wiser you become, the more you learn about the depravity of the world, how things just fall apart, how people are, how you are, and so forth. If you view all that and you don't account for the sovereignty and the power and the goodness and the truth and the promises of God, I mean, everything is meaningless. You may as well just do your best to please your nerve endings, because that's really all you are anyway. But I think that's what we discover in Ecclesiastes, because the more you discover about life, the more you realize that you're just way more jacked up than you ever imagined yourself to be. You commit sins that you never thought you would commit when you were maybe 18 years old. You are hurt by others in ways that you could have never imagined. You go through sufferings, hardships. You check all the boxes, right? Like you were talking about, and you did that's why it's good to become well versed in the Proverbs. Before you really dig into Ecclesiastes, because the Proverbs really give you this kind of baseline, because it's true. You reap what you sow. Like that would be some kind of a proverb. But train up a child in the way they should go, and they will not depart from it. Well, there are lots of parents who have done in their with all of their weakness and inability and sin as impeccable of a job of being a parent as they possibly could, and their kids go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Well, yeah,
and then there are these rotten parents, and their kids turn out great and become people who follow the Lord and love Him.
Totally. And if you buy into this karmic vision, karma, that that is a immutable law in the universe, mm-hmm. then you are going to feel discouraged, depressed. It's all about, and you're going to do hermeneutical gymnastics to say what that really means and all of that. But if you have the grid that, in an idealized world, in a perfect world, that would be true, Right. And we ought to live that way. And there are covenant promises to families, but that's not a guarantee, because God doesn't work that way. I really don't think. I mean, that's not how grace works.
It's a generalization, but yeah.
Yeah, and children are, moral agents, mm-hmm. and all kinds of things happen. But if you treat the Proverbs like they're immutable laws and rules, then you are going to then, like you said, blame yourself. So the only thing you could do then, if a child doesn't go the way they should go, is do a hermeneutical gymnastic to make that verse mean what it doesn't mean, or you automatically take the blame. And the truth is, if I'm going to take the blame for how my children turn out, man, there's a lot of blame I can have, because I mess up all the time.
Oh yeah.
Now again, we hold in tension the promises of God for covenant homes and proverbs like this, but we also know that in a fallen world, a lot can happen. And, but, ultimately, if that child belongs to the Lord, they will never be lost. They may be a prodigal.
Right.
So, but that's the point. Like Solomon explores these things, both the successes that don't taste and the failures that, well, why did that happen? And, and he comes to a conclusion at the end of the book. And when you read this, it really, like, he takes you on a great journey, and the themes are going to spiral. They're going to come around and around and around. So we'll hit them over and over and over. And I just find it really helpful, because when I don't understand what God is doing, and that causes me distress or confusion, or things didn't work the way I thought they should, there is still meaning and hope in them. And we serve a sovereign God who, well, again, it's like the last verse in Ecclesiastes. I don't think we need to keep people in suspense, because at the end of the day, we're always gonna go to that. The end of the matter, it has all been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And it's funny. I told the congregation on a few occasions when, people, like, I don't preach life tip sermons. Now, I always try to have very relevant application that is flowing from the heart and all that. But, like, people that want life tips are, they're often frustrated with my preaching. But, like, I said to the congregation recently in a sermon, and maybe in two, like, do you really not know what to do? Do you really, like, you don't know what to do? You want me to tell you what to do? Like, what does God require of you, oh man? So, what is it? Seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Like, fear God and keep his commandments. I mean, come on. The issue is not that we don't know what to do. The issue is that we don't naturally do it, or we don't want to do it, or we're oriented toward ourselves and not toward God, And the fact that he goes through 12 chapters and just says, throws his hands up. Look, fear God and obey him. That's what we need to do.
I know, exactly, and I think that's the point, because what you see here is a person who takes you sort of on this guided tour of his life, right? What has he pursued to find meaning, hope, satisfaction, self-validation, answer all those big questions like we were talking about a moment ago. And he pursues wisdom, intelligence, understanding, not just intelligence but and knowledge, but actually wisdom is how to apply that in a fruitful way. And he pursues improving his standard of living, right? And he has this great swath of property, but then it's like the more that he has, the more trouble it brings, the more things don't work. You move into a bigger house and you realize that that house has more things that can go wrong with it. And
bro, that's where we are. We live in a house right now that is too big, and my wife is really looking forward to downsizing, which is really putting me to the test. But it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
anyway,
I've got these friends that, like, they want to go live out of the country and have all this land and all these animals, and I'm thinking I would rather have a colonoscopy twice a month for the rest of my life than have to deal with that. I mean, it's so much work. I mean, I see the beauty and the joy of it all, but it's crazy. And then,
speaking of getting older, I had my first one this year. I didn't remember anything. It was everybody complains about it. I guess the prep ain't fun.
That's the part that's the worst for
anyway.
All these pursuits, right? And it really zeroes in on idolatry, because now this is going to come as a shock coming from two Presbyterian ministers, but we're covenantal people, right? Like, in other words, we have to be bound to something. our lives are galvanized by something, or myriad of things, and when those things, also very good things, become the things that we live for, wisdom, the accumulation of goods and services and pleasures and relationships and whatever the case may be, and those things become ultimate, the more despairing I think that you'll ultimately be, because you get to the end of the road of those things and you find out exactly what the author of Ecclesiastes says, which is, it is a chasing after the wind. In verse 8 of chapter 1, this is just so well stated. All things are full of weariness. All things are full of weariness. Every I mean, you go on vacation and there's weariness there. You look forward to retirement. You reach your financial goals. Your kids hit all these markers. I mean, there was wasn't there this golfer that won one of the big tour events, and it's just like, what do you do after you've won that?
Happy Gilmore? I just saw.
I don't think so. I don't think it was that. No, it was a real golfer.
Oh, okay.
Not
Shooter McGavin.
Shooter McGavin.
Yeah. Brother. We got to wrap it up.
Yeah. So if you are living for those things, I think the author of Ecclesiastes shows you that it satisfies, it gives you maybe what you wanted for a time, and then it leaves you asking the question, is this really it? I mean, is that all there is to it? And Ecclesiastes helps us to see that in a world without God being the one who blazes at the center of our life, is the foundation of our life, is our only hope and our only comfort in life and death, you just end up with this meaningless life. But there can be joy in it when you can rest confidently in the providence of God and the sovereignty of God and the goodness of God and all that the Scripture from cover to cover reveals to be true about Him and true about us in Him, and true about answering that question, where are we going? Where are you going? Ultimately, everyone has to answer that question. If you're just going back into the dirt and everything just kind of goes black, how you approach all of life is utterly different than if you realize that in Christ, the worst thing that you experience in life is the worst that you'll ever experience in life, because there's the hope of glory. And outside of Christ, the best thing that you experience in life is going to be the best thing that you experience in life, because there's ultimately condemnation.
Yeah.
So
that's the grace to stand on.
That's
right
the
there.
grace to stand on.
That, like Solomon is looking and he's seeing the cyclical nature of things, and people live, people die. There's a time for everything. We'll get to that in chapter. But the truth is, Christ comes in and breaks time. I mean, he is making all things new. It's not all vanity of vanities. And the works we do here are, we will be rewarded for in heaven. Again, not in a works righteousness, but it says we'll receive crowns that we give back to Him. And the suffering we go through here is producing in us an eternal weight of glory. See, Jesus Christ is the key to Ecclesiastes, because He's the one that is making and has made all things new. And like you said, in the new heavens and the new earth, it's not going to be vanity of vanities. It's going to be an eternity of growing in the knowledge and the love of our Savior in a physical existence that's going to be awesome. Like Solomon could never say this in the new heavens and the new earth.